You've downloaded the Epic Games Launcher, you've logged in with your account, and you're ready to get started. Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to click on the Unreal Engine section and open that up. That will open up the landing page for the Unreal Engine. It's going to have a bunch of useful articles and tools and different things to look at. But for now, we're just going to go straight to the Library tab. Here, you'll see all of the different versions of the engine that you have installed, your active projects, and anything you have in your vault, where all of your marketplace content is stored. You see I have engine version 4.22.3, the version we'll be using. If you don't have 4.22.3, go ahead and click on the engine versions button, click on the drop down of the option it pops up, and find 4.223. Go ahead and start it installing. I'm going to launch my version and it's going to open up this new projects window. You can open up a current project that you have, but I'm going to go to a new project tab. Here you have a bunch of different options that you can select from. It's anything from first-person shooters to platformers. These are all the basic templates that you'll be able to use. We'll select the third-person template. We have our different options at the bottom here. We can set what type of target platform we're going to have. In this instance, we're going to keep it with desktop/console. We're going to keep the settings on maximum so it looks as good as possible. And we are going to start with the starter content. There's the path that our project's going to be created, and we're going to name it. In this instance, I'm going to call it test project. Then you hit create project, and that's going to open up the editor. In the center, we have the viewport, which is where we will do a lot of our work. You can hold right-click and move your mouse to angle your view. While holding right-click, you can use WASD to move your camera around in the same way you would control a character in most video games. You can move up and down relative to your current view with Q and E, and you can scroll your mouse wheel in and out to zoom. Besides moving your camera, the most common thing you'll do in the viewport is manipulate actors. An actor is any object in our current scene. Basically, if it's in the viewport, it's an actor. Click on an object to select it. A tool called the Gizmo will appear. Currently it's set to location, which means that clicking and dragging on any of the arms will move our object in that direction. You can grab the connectors between two arms to move the object along two different axes, or the circle in the middle to move it along all three. In rotation mode, you can spin the object around its pivot, which is marked by your gizmo. By default, using the gizmo in any mode changes the value by the snap amount in the top right of your viewport. Click on those values to change them. Finally, in scale mode, you can change the size of the object. If you scale across all three axes, you can grow or shrink the actor. If you scale across only one or two axes, you will warp your object. If you have an actor floating over another one, press the End key and it will move to rest on top of the lower actor. Another useful tool in our viewport that you're probably going to use regularly is the Build menu. For now, we're just going to worry about building lighting, which is taking all of our light sources and figuring out where they should be casting shadows, and so it generates spots of brightness and spots of shadow. You'll see the shadow is changed on our cube. In addition to changing the scale options in the top right of your viewport, you can also change your camera speed, so that way you can either speed up for an especially large map or slow down when you need to get fine detail. You can click on the tab and hit hide tab to get a little more space on your viewport. In the top left of your viewport, you can change the way the camera is going to look at your scene. Right now we're in perspective mode, which means it's basically how our eyes normally function. We can set it to top, bottom, side to look down a specific axis, and that will help us when we need to position things in certain ways. We can also change the lighting in our viewport. So right now in lit mode, everything looks like it will in the final game. But if I change it to unlit, it pretends that there's uniform lighting across the entire space. Now, because we're using all of these gray boxes, you no longer can see where the edges meet, because the light is uniform and thus there are no shadows to give us depth. The icons on the top are the toolbar. Basically, each one of these will open up a different window that we'll do some work in. On the left, we have our Modes tab. This gives us our different options for creating objects, modifying landscape, things of that nature. At the bottom, we have our content browser. This is where all of the files in your project live, so that way you can interact with them. And then up on the top right, we have our world outliner. This is basically a list of all of the actors that we currently have in our scene, often organized in folders. Most of these panels, like the content browser down here, have view options. This allows you to customize how things are displayed. So for instance, we could change the scale of the icons in our content browser. Currently, we're only seeing all of the items in the current folder we're in. But if you hit the icon here in the top left, that will open up our folder structure. So we'll be able to navigate the different areas of our project. And just like any other window, you can scale all of these different panels just by clicking and dragging on the edge. Our details panel is going to have specific information about the actor we have selected. Things like positional data, what 3D model to use, what material to put on the 3D model will all exist in this area. Another useful tool is the camera preview. If you click on an object that has an associated camera, like our third person character here, you'll get a little preview that will show you what will you actually see from this character's perspective. If we hit play, we'll take control of this character, and because it's the third person template, it's basic controls that you would expect from any third person video game. WASD to move, space to jump, so on and so forth. At any point, I can hit escape and I'll exit play mode and return to the editor. If we go over to our modes panel, we can go to geometry and have the list of binary space partitioning objects that we can use. They're called BSPs for short, and just think of them as the basic building blocks of Unreal. Let's go ahead and grab a box and pull it out into our scene to add one. To keep things organized, I'm going to collapse some of the folders in our world outline and create a new one just for the platforms I'm going to create. You can double click on the name of an object to edit it, and I'm going to rename this to Platform 1. If you hold Alt while you use the gizmo, you'll create a exact copy, a duplicate of the actor you're interacting with. You'll also notice that because I named my first platform Platform 1, Unreal automatically names the next one Platform 2. In addition to holding Alt to clone, I can also hold Shift to lock my camera's position relative to the new actor I'm creating. So that way I can drag this actor over to the right and move it without having to readjust my viewport. If you select multiple actors and you manipulate the gizmo, then whatever you're trying to do, in this instance, moving them up, will be applied to all of the selected actors equally. So I'm going to make a couple of steps to jump on, and because I'm trying to line them up specifically, I am going to use one of the different views, the top view, in order to get a better understanding of the space between each of my platforms. In addition to using the gizmo to move, scale, and rotate my objects, I can also just type in values directly in the detail view. I can also right click on any of the sections to collapse them, and also under the view mode, I can collapse everything to make it a little easier to navigate through. Now I don't want to just have boring cubes, so I'm going to look in my content browser, find the materials section, and drag the materials onto this object. It will automatically apply the material, and now it looks like we have a wooden box as opposed to a placeholder object. I can go into the modes panel and select lights, and I can pull in a point light. And so now I have basically a little orb that will cast light in all directions. I can go under the options and I can increase the intensity to make it brighter, change the color of the light, and I can change the attenuation radius, which is basically how far will that light actually be cast in my game level. I can also grab a point light, which acts like a spotlight, casting light forward in a particular direction. I can also modify the intensity, but the difference here is I have the inner and outer cones. The inner cone is the solid band of light, and then the outer cone is how far out it diffuses. And so you can either create very hard lines or very soft lines. There is a massive list of actors that you can pull into your scene. So take some time and read through the Unreal documentation and just try them out. Pull them into your scene and see what they are and play around with them to familiarize yourself with the different tools you have at your disposal. We can also double click on an object in our content browser to open up the asset viewer. In the instance of a material, it's going to open up the blueprint graph. This is all of the connections and code that tells the material how to apply itself when it's put onto an actor. If you notice the tab at the top of my editor and the tab at the top of this window, we can click and drag and dock so that the asset viewer will take up our entire screen. If we go and open up a static mesh, a 3D model, we can see that there's a different window with different options for things like collision. After we've done a bunch of work in our scene, we want to make sure to save it. So we can hit File, and then we can hit Save Current if it's a level that already exists, or in this instance, when it's a new one, we can hit Save Current As, and then add a name for our level. We didn't change any of our other objects, but if we had, we could use Save All to save everything in our project. That's it for now. Don't forget to save.